It is my pleasure to have back to the show Madeline Ravitch from Connecticut Coalition to End Homelessness. Thanks so much for being here. And every year you bring a Paddington Bear and a book and something for the little ones. How is it going this year? What kind of inroads have we made?
We've made such inroads. I think when we first started doing your show several years ago, shelter diversion, which is what this is all about, was a very new idea. This idea that we can help a family remain housed rather than enter the shelter system. That was surprisingly mind-blowing and new at the time. And now it's really become a best practice here in Connecticut, and this campaign has been a big part of making that happen.
And how does it work? Let's explain to the folks how this works and how they can get involved.
Sure, how the Paddington Bear
Yes.
work. Yeah. So we started this campaign, as I said, several years ago, and we knew that we wanted to help raise awareness around this practice of shelter diversion. And so that is when we were fortunate to bring a friend on board to help us. His name is Paddington Bear. Many people know him, and he is famous for many reasons, but one part of his story is that he was homeless at the beginning of his journey. So we said, what could we do with that story to help people understand what it's like for a child to be homeless and how we can help? So Paddington is our spokesbear for the Be Homeful project, and we have a very special campaign we started 3 years ago. This will be our 4th year running it with Connecticut Realtors, where people can give a Paddington Bear to a child in shelter for $25. But the magic of it is because the gifts are underwritten by Connecticut Realtors and Citizens Bank, the money actually goes into an emergency fund that helps families stay housed in the first place.
But this actually goes to a child.
This goes to a child. Last year we gave Paddington Bears and books. Every child in shelter gets a bear and a book, so we gave out bears and books to 1,000 children around the state. And it was actually people from Citizens Bank came out and wrapped the presents, and the realtors with Daily Moving came and loaded them onto the truck and took them out to shelters around the state.
And this is for babies. This is the one for babies.
Children under 2 get this adorable blankie and a board book. We actually have a regular book that the older children get as well.
Awesome. Now there's also, we should tell you about the Marmalade Drive and how does that work?
So for children, we built this campaign for kids, families, and communities to learn about how homelessness affects children in their communities and to take action to help. So that takes different forms. For the grown-ups, we've got these Paddington Bear Raiser kits that I can tell you about, and then I can talk about that as well. So, all right. So, Anne, what would you say if I told you that this box is magic?
I would believe you.
Would you?
Yes, because I know you and I know how awesome this program is.
So this box is magic because it can end homelessness for a family in your community, and here's how it works. So you open up your box. Here is a note to our ambassador, that's you, explaining how to hold your very own Paddington Bear Raiser drive. Then there are materials to set up a tree display, a giving tree. You hang tags on the tree that look like this. They look a little different this year, but each tag has a picture of a bear, a book, a blankie, or a board book, and it says $25. You hang them on the tree, and as people make donations, people give you their $25, you take down the tags, and then you can give them.
So this is for stores, for churches, for whoever wants to have a giving tree like this. They take this off and they keep kids and families in homes and out of shelters.
Yes.
What is the homeless rate in our state for children? How many kids?
So last year we have fewer than 1,000 families in shelter, right? And it's going down every year because of this campaign. Last year we actually prevented 1,000, or over the course of this campaign we prevented 1,000 children from becoming homeless. So it's really, really powerful. We are seeing a decrease in homelessness for families because of actually this shelter diversion practice. We make it a practice to work with families at the front door of shelter to explore alternatives, and it's working. So, but there still are, close to 1,000 children in shelter every year, and so, it's our goal to make those holidays as special as possible for them, but whenever possible to prevent families from going into shelter in the first place and helping them stay at home, because shelters aren't bad places, but there's nothing that compares to a home. So,
tell me, how does Connecticut rank compared to other states? Do they look toward us as my gosh, you have this great program rolled out. Have others copied it?
Yeah, so it's interesting. We do get a lot of calls here in Connecticut for training and technical assistance to help other communities learn how to do shelter diversion. Shelter diversion has sort of taken hold in different parts of the country. It looks a little different from place to place, and not everybody has the coordinated access system that we have here, where there's a single front door to shelter, and we can really make sure that we're using the scarce resources we have as effectively as possible. In some parts of the country, you see a spike in homelessness, and they're really struggling. And you know, we go back to that shelter diversion is such an important component of how we can really help families. I didn't finish explaining why this is magic. This box is magic because it's only $1,000 to prevent a family from becoming homeless, and there are 40 tags in this box. So when you sell out your tree and your 40 gifts on the tree, you've raised $1,000, because $25 times 40 gifts is $1,000, and that's the average amount to prevent a family from becoming homeless. The cost of entering shelter is much higher, both financially and also because the #1 predictor of whether somebody will be homeless as an adult is if they experience homelessness as a child.
It becomes cyclical.
It normalizes the experience.
So the other program is the Marmalade Drive, and how does that work?
Sure. So kids are at the heart of this program in so many ways, and you know, these bear raiser drives raise more money than the Marmalade Drives, but we wanted from the beginning this to be a campaign that was owned by children in every way. That the idea that it's kids helping kids by learning themselves, by educating their communities. You know, this idea that we have to enter shelter is something that's so burnt into the minds of adults, but kids can think differently. We have lesson plans on our website, behomeful.org, that teachers can use to educate kids. We've got story time guides that parents and librarians can use with their children. And one thing that we've seen this year that's really wonderful, we've had some what we call Paddington Ambassadors, which are kids who volunteer with us, who've been doing it for so long, who've been learning and exploring this topic of homelessness and what it means for kids in their community for a couple of years now. And they're now going into their elementary schools. These are high schoolers now, going into their elementary schools, using the lesson plans, adapting them, and using them to educate kids in their own communities about how homelessness is preventable. And it's really, really exciting to see. We've seen it actually in a couple of towns, and we're hoping that it continues to grow. We're even seeing some of those kids start Be Homeful clubs in their high schools, which is really exciting.
What keeps you doing this year after year? You're here, you're so engaged. What keeps you doing this?
Well, I'm a mom, so I think about my own children and how fortunate we are. And I see the impact on children I see the impact on children, right? Today I was in a shelter, and you know, this was a shelter, again, shelters are trying their best, but this is a shelter where there are 30 people to a room, right? A big room with 30 people, including children. Can you imagine what that would be like? And you know, they'd push the beds together, you know, to try to make it as close a sense of a family unit as possible. But you know, this idea that everybody should have a home seems so fundamental and basic to me. It feels like something that we should all be able to get behind, and I think that seeing people starting to get their head around that and understand how they can make a difference, and that Be Homeful is an avenue for doing that, that's really exciting. And seeing it as sort of a very grassroots movement that is growing, that's a wonderful thing.
So the idea of the tree and taking a tag down and giving money, and the kids get bears. How many people embraced that last year? And was it stores, was it churches? Where did those trees pop up? And you can get your own tree and do this anywhere. So was that really embraced last year?
Yeah, it was wonderful. We raised over $100,000 last year, which was really, really amazing. We saw that these trees were used by workplaces. They sort of do their year-end holiday drive, or maybe they do an event and make the tree the focal point of the event. We saw churches. You know, I just actually got an inquiry from a church who held a drive last year saying, "Where's my box? We want to get started with our drive." We didn't really see synagogues. I think the giving tree might be a challenge but we'd love to challenge communities to all think about how to adapt this in a way that really works for them. And then last year we also saw the beginning of retail drives, which was really kind of a cool new twist. Splash Car Wash last year held a drive in 6 of their locations. This year they're going to do it in all 22 of their car washes, so that's exciting. This year we have some businesses not directly tied to the boxes, but who are holding fundraisers for Be Homeful for the holidays. Care Skincare is one that's going to be donating the proceeds every Monday from an eye cream that they're selling just for Be Homeful.
So if everybody pitches in a little, it just works out.
Exactly. If everybody kind of says, how does this work for me? Because we really have learned it's not one size fits all. That's the way grassroots movements are, right? It's kind of everybody saying, okay, if I really want to make a difference for a family in my community, how can I do that? And we're here to help. So.
What's on the front burner of the organization as we go into 2020? What's coming?
Well, so much. So, as I said, the shelter diversion was a very new thing a few years ago. Now we've got a system, we call it coordinated access. So, you know, people from agencies, shelters, and communities around the state have come together into a system where people can call 211 when they need help. You know, they can be assisted over the phone whenever possible.
And that's important, 211.
211,
yeah.
That's if you need help, that is the thing that you should do. You should call 211. That's really very important. So, you know, I think our next frontier is, of course, we need to do more work on the affordable housing end of things. On the prevention side, you know, we're really trying to figure out how we can be working with, you know, schools and criminal justice. We're doing a lot of really interesting work with criminal justice. We did a data match where we figured out that there were 1,200 people who had utilizing the shelter system who had been in the criminal justice system in the last few years. So, you know, we're really trying to figure out as an organization and as a coalition how we can bring together different systems, again, to use the scarce resources we have as effectively as possible. And none of it's possible without this kind of emergency assistance. These funds are absolutely critical, and actually at this time of year we're seeing them run out. And, you know, the frontline workers who are the ones who access it for their clients are calling us and saying, what can we do now? And that's why we're really happy that we're back at it with this campaign again, with the Connecticut Realtors, with Citizens Bank, and with all of the different people who so generously are stepping forward to hold bear raiser drives again and again. So,
well, it's an awesome campaign, and it's taking the life of a child that maybe was going to go to a shelter, they can stay home, and that's everything. As you say, it's fundamental to most of us, but for some, not so much. Madeline Ravitch, thank you so much for being on from the Connecticut Coalition to End Homelessness. And all of you, get a tree and get your tags and help a family. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ann.
Spend all night kissing and if was right here, then who else is missing? Got a little sidetracked if I'm so wishing to find the keys to the door, but it's also a metaphor. Need to keep locked in the grocery store, but mine just the same time. Skip right ahead to the last ride.